so delighted that this afternoon we're joined by my good friend, Dan Moss from California. Dan and I became friends several years ago when he brought a show to Edinburgh for the Festival Fringe about the life and times of Jane Fonda. And I was so impressed with the quality of the production and the content of the play and the way the whole thing was produced. And later, when I was working on a project to develop the Edinburgh Jewish Cultural Center here, I asked Dan to join me on an advisory committee, and to my delight, he readily accepted. So we've become friends over the last several years. And when we chose this theme of entertainment and music in faith, I couldn't think of anyone better to interview for this program. So Dan, welcome back to Scotland. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. I miss my friends in Scotland. I was blessed when I produced The Trial of Jane Fonda to make a dozen friends.
Great. So you've had a long and distinguished career in both entertainment and law. Tell me about your personal journey. I want to go back to your parents, where you were born, how you became interested in entertainment and later law. Just tell me the whole story.
I'm blessed, wonderful grandparents who I'll tell you more about later gave me my faith. But my grandmother came over with my mother and her brothers in 1917 from Russia. They were born in Kiev. At that time, they were dropping Jews down wells with ropes on their necks. And they needed to escape. And my grandfather came a couple of years earlier. So they went to England. And England, they boarded a ship, steerage, and it took them 3 weeks while at the bottom of the ship to get to New York. They came through Ellis Island. Their names are there and inscribed. And they settled in Manhattan, English without an accent, which is difficult for most Russians. She went to work she did that to get a job as a sales girl at Macy's. And mother's always been very hardworking and good with the books and all of that. Dad was painting the outside of the Empire State Building when they met, and scaffolding and all of that. He too is a hardworking and enterprising man. And they met and got married. And during that time, my Uncle Sam was dating a Russian actress by the name of Veroskaya. And it was the time of silent movies in the early 30s. And she was offered a job and a contract at MGM. And she said, I won't go unless Sam comes with me because he speaks English and I don't. So they went on the train to California, and in order to get my Uncle Sam off the set, they gave him a job as an apprentice film editor. I'll just throw out, by the way, my Uncle Sam went on to produce Ben-Hur, Quo Vadis, King Solomon's Mines, Mogambo, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, and a few other films. But anyway, he was a film editor. My mom and dad had their first daughter, Muriel. And unfortunately, a nurse popped a blister in a bassinet at the hospital and she got blood poisoning. It was before penicillin and Muriel passed away. Well, mom had to get out of New York. She said, I had it. And she called my Uncle Sam and she said, Sam, can you help us? We're going to come to California. And he said, sure, come on out. I'll teach Louis how to be a film editor. And so they drove to California. The car broke down in Tucson, Arizona. Dad sold the car for junk, put mom on the bus, and he hitchhiked to California. And they rented a place in Venice Beach on Breeze Avenue. And dad went to work as an apprentice film editor. And that got him into show business. And dad went on, by the way, to win Golden Reel and Golden Scissors Awards for film and sound editing for Spartacus and Lonely of the Brave. But during that period of time, they built a house in 1940 in Cheviot Hills, where I grew up, which is next to the Rancho Golf Course, and which is where I learned to play golf at about 8 or 9 years of age, caddying and all of that. But independent editing was a difficult business at the time. It wasn't a steady job. So he went into partnership with a guy and formed a restaurant we called Cattleman's Steakhouse. And mom was the cashier. Dad learned to cook, cut beef, hang beef. Um, Between the two of them, it became a very successful restaurant. And I was, as a young boy, peeling potatoes, washing dishes, worked in the kitchen, learned how to cook 20, 30 steaks at a time. Um, it was a great way to grow up. We had a motion picture theater on the corner where we would watch the Saturday matinees and all of those things with the Cowboys and Roy Rogers and Gene Autry. Um, so it was a great way to grow up. I know that when I think of, I was in just about to be 13, and my grandmother my folks had assimilated very much into the industry, and my dad even would bring a Christmas tree home on Christmas night. It's the best time to buy a price because they were all going out. And so we were kind of celebrating a little bit of Hanukkah and Christmaka, I think we called it. and
My family did the same.
my grandmother insisted I become bar mitzvah. And so I went to an Orthodox shul, Anshe Emet, as a result, and became bar mitzvah in my late 13 years of age. And it's, I think they were interesting years because being in the restaurant business, Dad would occasionally go edit a film, and Mom would keep things going. My two older brothers started to get involved in the restaurant business. One went to the Air Force, the other was in the Navy. And so we were an active family and with my uncle producing now major films. I got very involved in the entertainment business early on. I went to law school. I was the black sheep of the family by going to law school. They were producing and film editing, and my older brothers became agents.
Well, your career has been very expansive, all the way from family moving from New York to California and the inspiration that your grandmother had in your life. I'm wondering how all of that connected in your mind with you producing the major 70th anniversary for the nation of Israel. Tell me how that came about.
Well, over the years, I've produced some very major, large events. I've produced inaugurals for Reagan. I did Reagan's 80th birthday with Nellie and Margaret Thatcher. I produced the opening of the Reagan Library with 5 living presidents. I opened the Summit Arena in Houston for Ken Schnitzer with many stars. And so I've been blessed to have the opportunity, be asked, and produced successfully those events. When somebody said, "What was it like to work for Nancy Reagan?" I said, "Well, the good news is I'm alive. The bad news, it's as difficult a chore because if you messed up, I don't know what would happen, but the good news, they were all successful events." But she's a taskmaster, and all she wanted it to be was the very best. So Pat Boone was a client, and I put together a tour of Israel for Pat. He wanted to do a final tour. He'd been there a couple of times. And when looking at the calendar to put together the tour, I noticed that Israel's 70th anniversary was an opportunity. We could actually travel during that period of time, and we would get the people, and we would figure out a way. And obviously, Pat would do a concert while there for the people who would come. So we had over 250 people who signed up for the tour. And then I began to figure out where I would have his concert, and I put the concert on actually the night before the anniversary. And I had big dreams. I wanted to do it at a place called Caesarea. Caesarea is a Roman amphitheater north of Tel Aviv. And it's great with it's this magnificent half dome circular theater of stone, a stage, and then in the background is the sea. The problem was I ran a budget um, because we're in an industry called show business. It's
Mm-hmm.
not show. And you have to be able to raise enough money and make it profitable to get people to invest in that. The cost of doing the concert at Caesarea, the below the line was over $1 million.
Wow.
The Romans forgot to put in lighting. Uh, they didn't put a stage in. There was no sound, no bathrooms, no real seating other than the stones, and they forgot to build generators. And to make a long story short, the cost of all of that and bringing it out there uh, was enormous. So I had already had a commitment from the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra, and I said to them, can we use your theater, which was in Jerusalem? And the Caesarea would seat 5,000. This was only 1,000. But we said, okay, we're going to cut our budget. We're going to make it happen. And, fortunately, they have lights, sound, a stage for the symphony. And now I just put together Pat. I was able to get Barbara Streisand to record the introductory video. And we have some top Israeli artists, and we did it the night before the actual 70th anniversary. I was able as a Jew to go over there and see the things I wanted to see. I had actually 5 trips, and I understood a lot of issues. I wanted this wonderful children's choir that was made up of half Palestinians and half Jews, and I wanted them to perform. And I met with the choir master, and he said, Danny, any other night. He said, but we can't have them come to celebrate the 70th anniversary because it's the day of sorrow,
Oh.
Palestinians. And I began to understand what we were dealing with. And of course, I had to get another children's choir that was tremendous. But I did my own Gentile tour where I went to the Sea of Galilee and walked in the footsteps of Jesus, and the Sermon on the Mount and the miracle of the fishes. I did the 12 stations of the cross. A cute story, a Jewish friend of mine said, Danny, you don't need to do the 12 stations. He said, just go to station 7. Just go to station 7. That's the only. I said, why? He said, best hummus in all Israel.
That's great. Well, when you were producing this uh, milestone, iconic event with Pat Boone, did you think at all about how faith and belief systems evolve into the field of music and entertainment? What's the link between your faith and the work that you were doing with that 70th anniversary?
Well, I have a very ecumenical faith, and it's inclusive in a lot of areas, always has been. Um, and and so this was an opportunity to see Israel through the eyes of not only my religion. And
Well, what do you think, Dan, in terms of the future of music and entertainment, where you've spent most of your career in the post-pandemic world? In other words, we're talking about now how we restart the live entertainment business. Do you think it's going to be more television, um, internet driven, or do you think we'll be able to return to the live entertainment format? What are your thoughts about that?
um, they're mixed. I don't think we're going to go back to the big festivals where you're going to see, thousands of people cheek to jowls. I think, I can't wait for the theater to come back, but I can see it, the seating being every other and alternated behind. I think you have to get ahead of the curve. This isn't going to be here forever.
Mhm.
You have to be optimistic. I'm always a glass half full kind of
Yeah.
guy. Um, and we just have to figure out a way to make it work and when to work. But if you don't plan now, you won't be ready when somebody says, "Go."
Well, since you're a glass half full guy, as you know I am as well, I have to ask you, Since you've been so helpful in the development of the Jewish Cultural Center for Edinburgh, what motivates you to volunteer for causes like that and other projects? What's your motivation as a volunteer?
Well, I have been doing volunteer work almost all of my life. I know as a young man in college, we had a group called Troy Camp where I led the organization to raise money for underprivileged kids downtown Los Angeles. And we would take them to camp in the mountains and to see young teenagers, young kids who've never seen a stream, who you get to meet them and they live downtown LA, 6 miles to the ocean and never seen the beach. And you could take them, um, you realize you could do good and do well. And that kind of set me on my course to do events in college. I became a board member for 20 years on the Entertainment Industry Foundation. And that is much like the United Way, except it was for the city of Los
Yes.
Angeles. And we helped, I then produced probably, I don't know, 12 or 15 years of concerts downtown LA at the Forum. And we had Freddie Prinze and Roger Miller and Vicky Carr and just a lot of different towns who did these concerts, who raised a lot of money to help the charities in Los Angeles. For some reason, I've just always involved in doing and being able to give back.
You think any of that is motivated by that story you told me at the beginning about your grandmother having the courage to come out to California and to, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I stand on her shoulders. When I think of what they went through to come to America, and despite all the problems we're having in the United States today, there is no country where more people want to come to than the United States.
Last question, Dan. During your illustrious career and family life, living in Washington, D.C., California, and working all over the world, literally, have there been challenging times within your life that have been helped by spirituality or faith, whether it be your Jewish tradition or more ecumenical? What's pulled you through some of these tough times? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I drop on my knees in the morning and at night, and I ask God for guidance and help. Um, when things get really tough, I put together a gratitude list because I've been very, very fortunate in my life. No matter how bad stuff can be today, I make a gratitude list. It puts life in perspective. And I ask God for guidance and help. I light my candles. I've got a lovely menorah that I brought back from Israel. I brought a new tallis in the yarmulke. I happen to be a member of an interesting shul called the Temple for the Performing Arts. And it's a lot of people in the entertainment industry, founded by a friend of mine, Lee Miller, who had sadly passed away, and his wife, Cookie, that runs it. We have a great rabbi who comes out from New York. It's not, we meet once a month. We have high holiday services together. And Rabbi Telushkin has written an incredible, he's a great writer. He wrote a book on the Rebbe. Very intellectual, very gifted man. And so it's nice to be supported by fellow people in the entertainment industry. All of us try to do well and help each other.
You've demonstrated to me, Dan, in the years we've known one another, and certainly through today's interview, that you have the ability to seamlessly blend faith, spirituality within a life well lived in the performing arts. And you're hopeful about the future of the performing arts. I'm deeply grateful for your friendship and hope that you and the Temple for the Performing Arts grows from strength to strength. Thanks for joining us today from California.
Thank you. Blessings to you and